Hello and welcome to my newest Harlowe build. This is the culmination of all my knowledge and the most powerful green tree build I've ever played. This build is based around Halo Companion plus Nuclear Winter to guarantee critical hits on every single shot. We do a few things differently to other builds, such as using the Universal Generator class mod to amplify our damage and delete both bosses and regular enemies. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you've enjoyed. Any questions, please ask in the comments as I will respond, and I hope you enjoy. This build puts every single point in the green tree. This is because this is the most efficient way to build it, as the other trees don't really contain many bonuses that will benefit the build, at least the way we are building it. For our first 5 points, we put them into momentum. This provides 25% increased critical damage as long as we entangle enemies. Now what's really good about this is, of course, we always deal crits due to the way the build works, but also because of the way the damage formula works, this applies twice, meaning that 25% increased crit damage is actually 50% increased critical hit damage. Next up, we put our next 5 points into neutron decay, providing 10% gun damage per point as long as we irradiate enemies. We can guarantee radiation damage on every single gun due to a passive later in the tree called Meltdown, which gives radiation damage whenever we crit. And due to this build, critting with every single shot, we get radiation damage with every single shot, so every single shot can stack this bonus, meaning we can have 50% gun damage at all times. Our next 3 points will be into Confirmatory Reality, which restores our action skill cooldown whenever we shoot an entangled enemy. Due to runaway reaction later in the tree, we will always have a source of entangled even when our action skill is down, and also our action skill will apply entanglement on every single shot due to the interaction with Nuclear Winter. This means we can recover our action skill just by shooting any enemy, meaning we can have a near 100% uptime on our action skill. After that, we put 2 points into Creative Overflow. This gives us 12% damage depending on how much overshield we have, and because of distribution function later in the tree, we should always have maximum overshield, meaning we will always have this 24% increased gun damage. For this build's augment, we have Nuclear Winter. This gives us 25% cold damage at all times due to it interacting with Halo Companion, meaning we are always inside the bubble. This damage is considered action skill damage. This means we can scale it with action skill power, such as from our class mod that gives us 200% bonus whenever we trigger it, and it also stacks with itself, meaning whenever we trigger our action skill, we gain 50% of our gun damage as called. That's not even talking about Halo Companion, which gives us 25% increased gun damage, 10% fire rate, and 10% reload speed whenever we trigger our action skill. And this is in addition to the 50% cold damage we get whenever we trigger. If that's not enough for you, we will also get free crits with Excited States later in the tree, as it gives us critical hits whenever we damage enemies with our action skill, and due to Nuclear Winter, this is every shot. That's not all. For a limited time offer, we will also throw in Infinite Shield with distribution function, providing shield restoration on action skill damage, which, as stated before, is every hit. And shield restoration also means amp damage on every shot for double damage. Now, if that's not a good deal, then I don't know what is. Moving on from that very long rant about one skill, we will go on some much slightly shorter rants about individual skills with Excited State. Now, we've already stated what it does. It gives us crit damage and also gives us free crits, meaning every shot is a crit. As long as we're dealing action skill damage due to Nuclear Winter, all action skill, I'm repeating myself at this rate. But what's really good about this is it provides 7% crit damage per point, and as stated previously, crit damage applies twice, meaning this is 14% crit damage per point for a total of 70% crit damage. This doesn't mean refraction is bad, and in fact, if this skill wasn't buggy, I'd probably put 4 points in here and 1 point in Excited State. However, from my testing and from what other people have saying, this doesn't work the way you expect it to, and there's situations such as we're using Jacob's Ricochet where this does nothing at all. So we won't be taking this currently. However, if this gets changed in the future, this is a very good option to pick up. We will put we need 5 points to move on to the tree, so we're putting 1 point in accretion for lifesteal. Life isn't our main defense. However, having a little bit of lifesteal is very nice just for survivability in case enemies somehow get past our shields. Distribution function is here to make sure enemies don't get past our shield. It restores 24% of the damage our action skill does with 4 points invested as shield and overshield if our shield is full. This is good for survivability and also damage with amp, as every single shot will consume about 28% of our shield, and if we deal enough damage it will also restore a similar amount, meaning we can deal between 1.5 to 2.5 damage on every single shot. There is one thing I will note though, you need to do enough damage to restore your shields to full if you want to amp every shot. With our class, and this has to be neutral winter damage as well. With our class mod we can scale neutral winter damage, however there are certain things such as stickies which just don't deal enough damage, meaning you can't amp every shot, and they are half as effective in a lot of cases. This doesn't mean you can't use them on the gun on this build, they're just less effective. As for the capstone of the build, we will be using the group study capstone, which provides us a Halo companion. I've already really talked about this in the nuclear winter segment of the video, so I'm not going to reiterate a lot of the points. This basically just means we get crits on every shot and allows us all our combos to work. For our next 5 points, these aren't very important individually, however they do allow us to get down to a much more important skill. We will put 1 point into Harlowe's certainty principle. This gives us 10% gun handling. Gun handling is not a very important stat, and right now it is bugged and slows down our projectile speed, so we will only put 1 point in this as it allows us to get down to the next skill once we've put 4 more points into this segment of the tree, and those 4 points will go into Gamma Ray Burst. Now for mobbing this doesn't do much, but for bossing this is a very nice little bit of extra damage and helps with our one shots immensely, meaning every shot after we re-trigger our action skill, not every shot but the shot after we re-trigger our action skill, will gain up to 40% of our maximum shield as bonus damage. This is mainly for the one shots and also to get down to the tree to a more important skill, primarily critical funding. Critical funding is a very nice skill for quality of life. It is decent for DPS, particularly with some stickies such as the Queen's Wrath, I think it's called, and for multi-hit / multi-pellet guns such as shotguns. This makes the build feel much nicer and I'd recommend it. This also allows us to grab 1 point into Meltdown. This provides 8% of our damage as radiation damage whenever we deal a crit. Now right now I've done some testing with this skill and I don't know how it scales, because skills like Nuclear Winter, they apply nearer to the end of the calculation, meaning that the 25% from that skill is 25%. Now this 8% damage I don't think scales with a lot of bonuses, meaning it's not as good as it makes out to be. However, it does one thing. It gives us bonus radiation damage, and it doesn't matter how significant that radiation damage is, because it can provide a status effect for neutron decay, meaning it works well with that, and also it gives our non-elemental guns a radiation damage, and that status effect it provides can trigger runaway reaction, meaning we have a source of entanglement on non-elemental guns. This is more for the synergies and less for the actual skill. If this gets changed in the future and works and scales with all the bonuses, we will be putting 4 more points in it, but right now it doesn't really seem to scale well, so we'll only put 1 point as the other points are better used elsewhere. Our next 5 points will go into Decoherence. This gives us increased damage to entangled enemies and enemies in our flux generator. Now, while this might seem to be small, giving only 25% damage, this is multiplicative damage, meaning this is a 1.25 multiplier on all damage. As due to the way the formula works and crit damage is there, a lot of the damage bonuses we are picking up the build will diminish and not be as effective as they seem. The exception being stuff like Nuclear Winter and Decoherence, as this is a multiplier. So this is incredibly solid. We will also be putting 5 points into Feedback Loop. This gives us action skill damage, action skill duration, and action skill cooldown whenever we entangle an enemy. Due to our action skill and the combo with it, every single hit will entangle enemies, meaning we will have a permanent 50% action skill damage and action skill duration. These two are the important bits of this skill. Action skill damage scales our Nuclear Winter, and duration means the quality of life is much nicer for mobbing, and also lets us re-trigger our action skill more times, so we can get the damage bonus from our class mod as well as group study. For our last 3 points, we will put 1 point into Runaway Reaction. You don't need this if you've got it from the class mod, but I like it anyway just in case I swap it out. And our last 2 points you can put in many places. For this instance, we will put 1 point into Creative Overflow for another 12% gun damage, and our last point, let's put in Latent Charge for 10% damage when our Overshield is full. As for specialization, we've actually got quite a lot of options, and really it's not too important for the build, as a lot of the bonuses are very diminishing in their effect. So if you've got no specializations versus like optimized specialization, you're not going to see too much of a difference. This means it's easy to build, but also means it's dealer's choice. Personally, I use I am a gun because we've got a lot of gun damage. This gives us action skill damage, and well, seeing as the build is centered around dealing action skill damage, this is very solid. Same with a honed mine, giving us action skill crit damage. This is also very solid. The two skills I also very like are 20 points in Survivors. First of all, this gives us maximum shield, which can be converted into damage with Gamma Ray Burst. And also the two skills are very nice. Now this damage reduction you will feel because 30% is significant. And because of accretion as well as distribution function, we will always have full shield and health, meaning this is always active and we always have the damage bonus. The same goes for the best defense and its damage bonus. Other good options include we'll do this for a total of up to 50% gun damage, and overkill for splash damage when you kill an enemy. This deals skill damage, we scale action skill damage, so it's very good. The only reason I've not picked it is because it spreads your points really thin, and we just don't have enough right now. As for class mods, there's one option that is better above all else, and that is the Universal Generator. First off, let's talk about its unique effect. Whenever Harlowe activates her Flux Generator, she decreases her remaining action skill duration by 50% and gains plus 200 action skill power. This is incredible, as the action skill power increases our Nuclear Winter, turning the 25% damage into a 75% damage, which is multiplicative as well. And what's even better is this can stack multiple times, meaning it starts off as plus 50%, starting off at 75%, but then subsequently it adds another 50%, turning into 125%. The second activation, 175%, the third, and so on. This is incredibly powerful for scaling your damage, as there's not many sources of multiplicative damage in the game, and this is one of them. As for skills, they are also incredible. Control Group helps us keep our action skill up indefinitely during mobbing, and helps us get like 5-6 stacks of our bonuses while mobbing. Runaway Reaction means we save a skill point in the tree and allows us to entangle enemies even when we don't have our action skill active. Neutron decay provides gun damage at 10% per point, and resonance is action skill damage at 12% per point. Finally, the guaranteed passive is action skill duration. This is incredibly nice because the effect from this class mod consumes our duration, so having more of it's very nice. As for the skills you want, we've already gone over why they are all incredibly good, so really any combination is actually good. I personally prefer 4 in control group just because it keeps duration up during mobbing. However, literally any combination of these 4 skills will be good as they all provide significant buffs that will improve the build. As for passives, you really want stuff like gun damage, crit damage or generic damage. However, you don't need it, as in my instance I've used pistol damage, which does literally nothing for the bossing clips shown in the video. The class mod can be obtained from Vile Lictor, the final boss of the Terminus range, just here on your map in the Windspear district of the Terminus range. For our rep kit, it's pretty simple. We want amp for bossing, and that's about it. For mobbing, there's a lot of good options such as rage, elemental damage. However, we deal so much damage we don't need it, so really all we care about is amp for the big one-shots. For ordnance, we don't really care. I've tested a few out and I'm not really impressed. Ultimately, I've found that just using regular guns is better, and ordnance is more for the firmware that it provides. As for shield, there's one best option, and that's what's for dinner with amp. If you've not got amp, then don't use it and just use another shield that has amp, as it's the most important thing. However, it being what's for dinner is also very nice for its unique effect. Whenever we have overshield, we gain plus 25% shock damage. Now this isn't increased shock damage, this is a separate instance of extra shock damage on top of our damage, effectively acting as a 1.25 multiplier to our damage. However, as stated before, all that really matters is amp, and you can still get one shots without this shield, but this is your best option and really the only option for damage. This shield can be obtained from the Vault boss Origo in the Terminus range, Lowleys district, just here on your map. Finally, for our non-weapon gear, we have the Enhancement. As always, it depends on what gun you're using, with the generic gun damage, shotgun damage, etc. being the best because they are multiplicative. However, for my personal favourites are the Jacob ricochets, because whenever we deal a critical hit with a Jacob's gun, it will ricochet, and because of the way the build functions, we always deal crits, meaning this is always active, so instead of ricocheting to one target, it ricochets to 2 targets. So every single shot we shoot will hit 3 enemies. As for other options, it of course depends on your gun. For example, I've got this Atlas one that gives a chance to not consume ammo and fire rate when target locked. This is nice because we've got ammo restoration. Ammo restoration, and we can gain ammo. So this effectively means that our Atlas guns have unlimited ammo, and really I can't say much more than use the enhancement that matches your gun. It's firmware time, and the best option, as for most builds, is Deadeye, just for the sheer amount of crit damage it provides, because once the buff is fully stacked, it provides 100% crit damage, seeing as we always crit. This is incredibly powerful. For the last 2 in firmware, it depends on what you want. It's personal preference. I prefer high caliber because the gun damage is a 1.1 times multiplier and it is an additive. However, other good options include airstrike. Let's talk about the gun that lets us do one shot, and that is the Oscar Mike. On the surface, it's a very mediocre gun, dealing okay damage and a decent fire rate. However, its stats aren't the reason it's good. It's its underbarrel, the space laser. dealing a ridiculous amount of damage every 0.2 seconds, and this allows us to get the one shots you see at the start of the clips, while not being a rare that is incredibly difficult to farm. Now, the reason this is incredibly good for this build is the Space Laser normally can't crit, so it doesn't have access to the insane damage bonus from crit. However, due to this build's unique mechanics giving crits to every single weapon, it also applies to non-critting weapons such as this, meaning the Space Laser, which is balanced around the fact that it can't crit, now crits, and it is ridiculous. This gun can be obtained from Gen 1 after completing the Fault Hunting quest in the Carcadia Burn region in Lopside, just here on your map. Our next gun is the Linebacker. This is an incredibly powerful tall shotgun that has bouncing projectiles which increase in damage and radius per bounce. Now, this is an incredibly powerful effect, with the downside that the projectiles can't crit. However, on this build, we can give this crits even if it doesn't hit a weak point, so this gun always crits, turning an incredibly powerful weapon into a ridiculously powerful weapon. Combine it with a torque enhancement that increases its radius, and it will destroy both mobbing and bossing, with the slight downside that it also destroys yourself if you get unfortunate enough to get catched in the blast. This gun can be obtained in the Cuspid Climb region of the Terminus range, just here on your map from the Sky Spanner Crash. Our next three guns have all recently been buffed, and we'll start off with the Queen's Rest. This gun excels with both a Jacobs enhancement and a sticky enhancement, and just really serves the purpose of a splash damage weapon that does high damage. It also has the unique effect of firing high speed rounds and having a sticky homing projectile. Even without the unique effect, this is an incredibly powerful gun, and it is a great all-arounder, particularly for vile enemies, as it destroys the crystals in 1 to 2 shots for most hit enemies. Our next gun is also one that has recently been buffed, the Hellwalker. Before its buff, it was a quite mediocre shotgun that was outclassed by purples. Now this gun is a monster of DPS that destroys both regular enemies and bosses. There's not much more to say about this, as it really is just a generic shotgun that does fire damage, but due to its raw amount of DPS, it is incredibly effective on this build. Combine the fact that it is Jacobs, thus it's got ricochets, and this is a very nice gun for an all-rounder. Last but certainly not least, we have the Seventh Sense. This has a unique effect of spawning a homing orb whenever we hit an enemy. Now, this is an incredible all-round gun and also has recently been buffed. Even a mediocre one, such as the one I'm showing off in the video, destroys enemies to the point that you don't even get to see the unique effect because the enemies are already dead before we can reload. This really just serves the function of a high damage Jacobs pistol, with the unique effect mainly serving to make bosses slightly easier. This gun can be obtained in Dominion in the Terminus district of the area after completing a quest from Vile Ted and the experiments just here on your map. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Of course, if you like any comments, leave it in the comments. Please subscribe. It's nice. Yay. As for future content, I'm planning a Rafa build. I'm planning a Rafa video. It's just taking me a while because the video, I'm a really slow editor. Is it my fault? Yes. Am I gonna blame someone else? Maybe. As for future content, new Path of Exile is coming out soon, so probably gonna make a build video of that, maybe more depending on how it does. Bye.